All right. And can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you very well.
Okay. So we're going to start with sub-element um, one of element two, which is the general. And this is all about the FCC uh, rules and regulations. Might be the hardest part of the whole course for some people, like me. Um, what we're going to cover today, hopefully, are all five sub-elements. Uh, we talk about frequency privileges, and there's a thing called primary and secondary. On some bands, amateur radio is secondary, which means some other entity, mm, commercial, military, different things, FEMA are primary. So uh, we have to, uh, I guess, default to them. We cannot interfere with them if they're operating. We can't. We'll talk about some antenna structure limitations, which are FAA regulations, uh, so that airplanes don't run into our antennas. Fortunately, the limit is 200 feet, so it's not too big a problem. We're talking about transmitter power, some different types of emissions, a little bit about the weird 60-meter band, which has recently changed. So there's a couple questions that have been withdrawn. Talking about volunteer examiners and VEX, um, and some various things about control on repeaters and third party rules and the International Telecommunications Union. There's some definitions. Uh, you're probably familiar with some of them. Uh, Control operator is the actual person who is designated by the station licensee to operate the station. Normally, that's the station licensee. When you get a license, like your technician license, you actually got two. You got a station license and you got an operator or control operator license. You can, as the station licensee, delegate uh, control operation to somebody else as long as they have appropriate privileges to operate your station. You know, if they're going to operate on the general bands, then they have to have at least the general license. There's a thing called peak envelope power, we'll talk about, which is um, when you look at the envelope of your transmitter output, uh, the peak level of that envelope is called the peak envelope power. Uh, in something like single sideband, that envelope looks really weird. So whatever that peak is the peak envelope power, and that's what you're limited to. In most cases, it's 1500 watts, but it's less on some of the bands. We'll talk about those. There's also effective radiated power, which is relative to a half-wave dipole antenna. I don't think we talk about half-wave dipoles in the technician class. Uh, so it's your power going into the antenna multiplied times the gain of the antenna. so that if you had, say, you're putting out 100 watts and you had say, a Yagi that had 15 dB of gain, then you'd multiply that 100 watts by 15 dB, which would be your effective radiated power. And usually when uh, they're specifying something as effective radiated power, it's fairly low, like 100 or 200 watts. Or in the case of um, one of the 60 meter bands, it's 15 watts. Uh, there's also the effective isotropic radiated power, which works the same way, except its power relative to an isotropic antenna, where ERP is relative to a half-wave dipole antenna. And one of the things you'll learn in a few weeks is that a dipole has 2.15 dB more gain than an isotropic antenna. And I guess if you don't know what an isotropic antenna is, it's an imaginary antenna that would be a point source that radiates in a sphere, basically all directions. Whereas the half wave dipole is a real antenna, and most antennas are some configuration of a half wave dipole. Uh, so that's typically used as a reference because it's a real basic antenna. We'll talk a little bit about CW, which some people call Morse code, which is just continuous wave modulation where you're turning the carrier on and off. Kind of think of it as a binary modulation. Phone, which typically means some form of voice modulation, could be amplitude, frequency, um, phase, single sideband. Sometimes will allow or restrict image transmission, which is fast scan TV, that's ATV, or slow scan TV. This Hellschreiber stuff, which I'm not really familiar with. WeFax, which is facsimile. In other words, transmitting uh, faxes over radio. Uh, Spread spectrum is another form. It's not used too much in amateur radio. It's used in your cell phone. It's also used for controlling model craft, like model airplanes, model boats. When they talk about data emission, we're talking about basically digital information that's either done by audio frequency shift keying or frequency shift keying or phase shift keying. Those are the typical types of modulation that you do digital information with. We'll talk more about those in a few weeks. Some of the data modes are RTTY, which is radio teletype. It's a more modern version of the old teletype modes where you actually had like a typewriter type keyboard, and it was a wired connection. Now you do a similar thing with your radio, and a lot of radios have a RTTY decoder, and it's a keyboard. You text back and forth, typing. Packet mode is where you're sending messages like letters, which has a header, the actual data information, and a checksum on it. So there's some error detection and correction going along with it. Any questions on those? Okay. You don't have to remember all of these. Just be familiar, remember some of them. These are the basic bands that we'll be talking about. 80 meter being the lowest frequency band. Um, you notice that the 3.525 to 3.6 I did in green, and it's also in the second column there. I guess those three columns represent the International Telecommunications Union regions. They divided the Earth up into three regions. North and South America is in region 2, which is where we are, the center column. Um, and
Hey, Bob, are
yes,
you showing a slide?
excuse me.
Are you showing a slide?
Yeah.
I hope I am.
No slide is showing.
Uh, Anybody else seeing the slide?
You sent it in a
Oh,
download, so I have them downloaded and I'm going through them as you talk.
oh, I guess I didn't share it properly. I thought I had shared the desktop.
You may have, but I don't know how to function that. I just downloaded everything so that I can go through it as you go, like as a PowerPoint kind of thing.
Now I'm viewing Robert Lucan's screen. There
There
I
you
can
go.
see.
There you
Yes.
go.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, I can see it now.
Okay, well, I'm glad you pointed that out. Should we go back? No. Um,
Oops, that's not
okay,
good.
like I was saying, those three regions uh, in the International Telecommunications Union is kind of the top level of um, telecommunications. Each country, has an organization. Like here, we have the Federal Communications Commission. Other countries have similar bodies that work kind of under and with the ITU. So we mostly only care about Region 2. There is an exception. Uh, Part of U.S. territory, Guam, happens to be in Region 3. So some of the Region 3 stuff applies if you were in Guam or talking to somebody in Guam. The reason I did that first little subband in green is that's for CW on the 80 meter band. And the reason there's two frequencies uh, in between 3.6 and 3.8, it's allocated specifically to amateur advanced and amateur extra licenses. So general class cannot operate in that subband. And that's the case with these others where they're in yellow. The missing space in between is allocated to advanced and extra. So that's one of the few things you get by getting an extra license. There's a bunch of these little sub bands, and there's also some at the very bottom of some of the bands where you can operate that a general can't. Um, on the 40 meter band, that one is kind of one to remember because there's a few questions uh, regarding those frequencies. Um, 20 meters, nothing special. It just has a little sub band for extra and advanced, and the same for 15. Um, the 10 meter band I did in green because you can operate CW in the entire band on 10 meters as a general. There's also a question about that.
Okay. Um, All right. On the one that you're showing, it does show the darker green, but the ones that I'm looking at, well, now I'm comparing them, but the ones that we downloaded does not have the darker green. So,
Oh, that's because I downloaded them yesterday and I made some tweaks today.
okay, there you go. I understand.
I'm also not showing the full thing. Is this better?
Well, it's
That's good.
bigger, but we
Yeah.
can't
Okay.
see the bottom line.
Oh, no,
I assume.
that's the 10
And
meter from 28 to 29.7
so the dark green is for, you said CW?
CW.
Gotcha.
So that where there are pairs of yellow, the distance between, say, 7.125 and 7.175, the area between there is for the extra, the advanced and the extra.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Any other questions about this? I know it's a lot of numbers, but and we can come back. Um, so on those 80, 40, 20, and 15, which are the ones I did in yellow, okay, um, we have those sub bands that are allocated to advanced and extra. There are still advanced licenses. You can't get an advance, but people that have an advance can keep renewing it. A lot of them keep advance because you can't get it anymore.
Hmm.
It's just a thing. Okay, so for general class, you basically have all amateur privileges on the 160, which is really below HF, the 60, 30, 17, 12, and 10 meter bands. You have some limited privileges on 80 meters where you can do CW between the 3525 and 3600 kilohertz. I have no idea why they allocated it that way, but one of the things is for general class of the bands you can operate in. Typically, the upper end of the band is available for voice, except when it's not, like 30. Um, you can do single sideband or phone operation on the 80, 40, 20, and 15 in these upper subbands, which are above the extra and advanced, where the lower part of the subband you're allowed to operate in is allocated to CW and data. So you can do things like FT8, which is very popular, and that's down in the lower portion of the band. On 10 meters, you have all privileges. You can, like I said, you can do CW across the entire band. Usually CW is restricted to the lower portion of the bands. And you can be a control operator of a repeater on 29.5 and 29.7. As far as I know, we don't have any 10 meter repeaters in this area, but I might be wrong. Okay, 30 meters is a strange one, not as strange as 60, where you have limited operation. Basically, you can do data, RIDI and packet, FT8, FT4, those modes. You cannot do phone or image. In other words, you can't send slow scan TV, you can't do facsimile, you can't do single sideband. So it's kind of a strange band. There is a question where you need to remember that phone and image are prohibited. 60 meters is the weirdest band. It's recently been changed. It used to have 5 channels that were each 2.8 kilohertz wide, and you had to operate within within those 5 bands. You were limited to 100 watts effective radiated power relative to a half-wave dipole. So that means if you had a half-wave dipole, you were okay putting out 100 watts. If you had a higher gain antenna, then you'd have to reduce the power in to maintain the 100 watts effective. So in other words, if your antenna had 3 dB more gain than a half-wave dipole, you'd have to operate at 50 watts because 3 dB is twice as much, which hopefully you remember from the technician, because we'll talk about dBs later on in a few weeks. The new thing is the band that used to be in the middle, which is now 15 kilohertz wide. You can still only operate in 2.8 kilohertz bandwidth, but you can operate anywhere in that 15 kilohertz band. However, you're limited to 15 watts effective isotropic radiated power, which means if you had a dipole antenna, it brings you down to like 9.15 watts. And if you had a higher gain than that, even less. So I don't know what that was all about, but that's the way it is today. Unfortunately, there's no question about that because it was a change just recently. Okay. There's these are just some quotes from the Part 97 about interference on the 60-meter band and the 30-meter band, because we are secondary operators on those 2 bands. Somebody else is primary. So they're very particular about interfering with a primary user on those bands. So there's reason they did those. There's questions regarding interference with primary users if you're a secondary. So remember, it's both the 60 and the 30. Okay, we're ready for questions. See how much of this you remember. So on which HF or MF, which would be 160, are there portions where general class licensees cannot transmit? In other words, are there subbands that are restricted to somebody besides a general? Any volunteers?
A.
Any other volunteers?
Oh, well.
C?
We have a winner.
Yay.
Remember, that's the
C.
ones I did in yellow, 80, 40, 20, and 15. They all have those little bands in the middle for extra and advanced. So you cannot operate in those areas. Which of the following bands is phone operation prohibited? Remember, it's a weird one.
30 B, 30 meters.
B.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Bravo.
Yeah. I guess you should get used to using the phonetics. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. On which of the following bands is image transmission prohibited?
Bravo.
Bravo.
Bravo. Which of the following amateur bands is restricted to communications on specific channels rather than frequency ranges? You don't have to get this one because it's a withdrawn question, but it should be obvious.
Delta.
Delta.
Yeah.
On which of the following frequencies are general class licensees prohibited from operating as a control operator?
Delta.
General economy. Hmm. I don't know.
Oops.
Okay. You did say that.
That's one of those little, sub bands. The others are all okay. Which of the following applies when FCC rules designate the amateur service as a secondary user on a band?
Uh,
Bravo. Charlie.
I like Charlie.
You like Charlie?
That's the one I did in quotes.
yes. Yes.
Yeah, I know this stuff's hard to remember. It's the hardest stuff for me, but I've gone through it enough. I remember most of them. On which amateur frequencies in the 10-meter band, I need to shrink this. I can't see. May stations with a general class control operator uh, transmit CW emissions?
That's Delta.
I think you're
Which?
right.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
HF bands have segments exclusively allocated to amateur extra licensees? It's the old group of four.
So that would be,
Delta.
I was going to say Bravo.
Bravo.
Bravo. So I did those in yellow. It pops up a lot. Which of the following frequencies is within the general class portion of the 15-meter band? So first you have to remember what frequency is 15 meters.
So that would be Charlie.
So it's in 21.3 is just above 275. So it's in the portion you can operate in. What portion of the 10-meter band is available for repeater use?
That's Delta.
You think?
Oh, well, wait a minute. No. I don't see what I'm guessing Alpha.
Well, let's see.
Oh, it was Delta. Okay.
When general class licensees are not permitted to use the entire voice portion, which portion of the voice segment is generally available to them? Remember, there was a general statement about that.
Bravo.
Bravo.
I would guess Bravo, but it would be a guess.
Okay, well,
That was
did
pretty
pretty good
awful.
on those.
No, Nanette did.
Let's see. I probably should stop recording and do a new one. Oh, that's not good. Was I not recording?
You were.
You were, yeah.
Well, it doesn't have a not record. Hmm. Okay. Well, let's try to share this.
Just curious, are we going to take a break?
Uh, yeah. You want
I'm
one
just
already?
curious. No, I was just wondering if I should go grab something to drink now or if I should wait.
Well, I was going to probably take one after this.
No problem. Just curious.
Um,